How is ethics considered when photographing alcohol culture? By Rhys Finnis, Theo Park, Thomas Nixon and Catherine Phillips. So this is you, right here, that's you. You've been on a night out with your friends, you've had a good time, you've had a bit too much to drink, you've gone to the clubs, and a stranger approaches you without you realising with a camera and takes a picture. You don't think much of it, and a week passes, it's in the back of your memory. So a couple of months passes and you still don't think much of it, and you find out through a friend or through some sort of promotional material that a world-renowned photographer has featured a picture of you in their exhibition and photo book. How would you feel about this? Would you feel embarrassed? Would you not be bothered? Would you feel amused? Would you feel angry? Should photographers consider or be guided by the emotions of their subjects when taking their photos? The image in the slide above is taken by street photographer Dougie Wallace. In this project in particular, he takes pictures of British drinking culture. I, for one, would not want to be seen in his project. Dougie Wallace's Stags, Hens and Bunnies captures those in inhibited states around the site of Blackpool, England. Wallace balances on the edge of what is right and what is wrong. He photographs those who are intoxicated and unsure of those surroundings, maybe in embarrassing situations, but he does not put names on faces, allowing a form of anonymity. Does this make it ethically right? In terms of the legality of the scenario, there are little to no laws broken when taking another's photograph in public. Once photographed, that image belongs to the photographer. As long as the photograph is taken in a public place and not in a private area, there is no laws that can be breached. Despite there being no laws in place, we need to look at this in terms of a humane point of view, in terms of morality and what is right and what is wrong. So what does the ethical literature say within media? In Paul Martin Lester's Visual Ethics, a guide for photographers, journalists and filmmakers, Lester discusses the ideology of C, systemic ethical analysis. C is largely a product of what has been called the ethics mantra, which states, do your job and don't cause unjustified harm. However, Lester also lets it be known that part of becoming an ethical photographer is the journey, and that there will be times where their judgment is clouded. The key to produce work that aims in the common good and satisfies your need for storytelling. Image ethics, the moral rights of subjects within photographs, film and television, edited by Larry Gross, is a series of essays that examine the moral rights of models within various forms of media production. Each essay has a slightly different stance on unethical practices, but the one thing they all have in common is the responsibility, standards and obligations that the photographer must acknowledge. The book debates right of privacy, portrayal of minority groups and depiction of false light as key areas of exploration. Unlike Lester's visual ethics, image ethics looks more empathetically in the perspective of the subject, who holds little power in contrast to the media producer. The legality surrounding this power dynamic is ventured, and the protection of the subject is held in high regard. While Lester's book is written in the perspective of the ethical photographer, one who will make mistakes but will learn as such and become more of a rounded human being through photography. Despite these two books being very different, they share overarching similarity in ethical views in how the photographer uses their power. In relation to the ethics of photographing alcohol culture, we can hypothesize that Lester would ask the message, intent and portrayal behind the photograph, and through that we can cipher the efficacy of the imagery. A key cornerstone these authors might debate is at what point of intoxication does the imagery become unethical, and when is this line crossed? Here are a few examples where photography has caused controversy and challenged boundaries. Each image in the above slide breaks ethical codes expressed in both books. Each image displays human harm, war, torture, harassment, death, manipulation and blasphemy. Yet each one of these have achieved worldwide fame, featuring magazines, newspapers and galleries. If there is an ethical code that all media and art producers should follow, why is breaking these codes rewarded? Is there a line, or is the excuse in the name of art plausible? Photographers have a responsibility to shine light on a topic that transcends the systemic ethical analysis codes. The C codes, used by Lester, branches off of the 21st century philosopher Bernard Goethe and its 10 moral rules explored in the book Common Morality, Deciding What to Do. The first 5 rules prohibits the harm of other people, physically and figuratively. And if these rules were to be broken, then much harm would become of it. Many of the examples above show the breaking of these rules. The photo affects the people within it, the families and the groups of the people who associate with them. However, Goethe's final rule is to do your duty. Is it the photographer's duty to shine a light on these situations? The Terror of War depicts a naked child with her skin getting burnt off by United States forces in Vietnam, an image that poorly portrays everyone within it. However, once these images found their way to the media, a huge backlash and uprising within the United States ensued, resulting in American forces to withdraw from Vietnam, ending the war. So we come to this paradox of morality when applying Goethe and C to ethical photojournalism in photography. We will explore how alcohol culture comes under the same umbrella. So where does the power lie within photography? Morality lies in the power dynamics between the participants. The same rule applies not just for intoxicated individuals, but for drug addicts, the homeless, mentally ill individuals, and children. The photographers are in a state of knowing and direction. You could say the opposite for vulnerable individuals. In order to rightfully produce imagery of these individuals, the photographer should either present a consent form or permission from the family members when photographing these individuals. The approach should come from a place of respect and empathy. The photographer Lee Jeffries, who is known for such photographs, said, "I made an effort to learn to get to know each of the subjects before asking their permission to do their portrait." In this sense, it's the photographer's job to be the leading voice in raising awareness. However, this job should lie in the consent of the subject. So this is the problem when photographing alcohol culture. These people aren't able to give consent for their photos to be taken. Alcohol puts people in a vulnerable position because it impairs your judgment and decision making, as well as making you lose your sense of time and coordination. So does this mean we should avoid taking pictures of drunk people altogether? And how drunk is too drunk to give consent? Would the people in the following images have consented or been part of the photos if they were not drunk? To use Lester's point of view, we shouldn't completely avoid alcoholism, but approach it as an ethical photographer, understanding what is crossing the line and what isn't, while also taking into account body language and empathy.
With the world constantly being watched under 24-hour surveillance, whether that being through tracing, website, cookies, or CCTV, in the public sphere, CCTV is always a presence, and especially around the pubs, bars, and nightclub area. The difference is, one, being CCTV observes a wider view of the public, while independent photographers tend to create individuals as the subject within their photo. It is also important to mention how homeless people can be photographed walking around the streets at their lowest in their lives from CCTV, but photographers photographing nightlife get criticised for photographing someone just at their lowest in one night. The difference is, one, being CCTV observes a wider view of the public, while independent photographers tend to create individuals as their subject within their photos. Photographers such as Dougie Wallace, Macy Dukowitz, and Lee Jones have all documented how we act when we go drinking at night. Their approaches are all very different, but they all show that when we go out drinking, another of us lose control from our thoughts and actions. It is legal to photograph people on public land, however, is it right to take photographs of people who wouldn't legally be able to give consent? While out drinking, we didn't really pay attention to someone pointing a camera out at us until the next morning. Names are never included in the image description, although the people will still be recognised by friends, family, and even co-workers, which could affect jobs in later lives. We always associate drinking with students and younger people. This is due to the fact that we don't really see older people out drinking at night. Statistics show that the age group between 25 and 44-year-olds make up 59.3% of people who go out drinking in their lives at night. 75% and up are 31%, and younger people aged 16 to 24 take up 55%. In this photograph, in the slide, the majority of the people are under the age of 45. Lee Jones has documented the darker side of drinking out in his hometown, Scarborough. The scenes he captured portrays people fighting with cuts covering their hands and faces. A lot of his work shows men with bloodied faces being detained by the police, whereas the women in his images are usually shown posing towards the camera. This gives connotations that men are more aggressive and violent at night under the influence of alcohol compared to women. In an interview, he talks about how he always sees these kind of scenes in his hometown and how he hopes people seeing these images will deter them from drinking alcohol at night. Wallace, who we have previously discussed, also goes into nightlife photography by exaggerating moods and expressions of the nightlife scene by using a harsh flash to exaggerate the mood in unflattering images, such as here. Much like Wallace, Dukowski wants to capture the essence of British culture from the effects of alcohol consumption. Slightly delving into nightlife photography, Dukowski captures effects of drinking alcohol in a negative and almost embarrassing light by showing people at their most let loose. Dukowski also captures drinking as a ritual from the amount of times we repeat the same thing again and again. The use of lighting is also a lot less harsh than Dougie Wallace and also can connote the negatives of this lifestyle. No one is seen in a far discriminating state than Dougie Wallace, so you could argue that there is nothing too bad within this project. Wallace's images are very up and close and personal. They very clearly show the people's faces and identities, whereas Dukowski's photos are a lot less critical and harsh. The images protect the people's identity more because they don't always show their faces. Both photographers document how people act when they're drinking and have a different approach to this at night. Dukowski's images are a lot more natural compared to Wallace's. His work looks like the stereotypical nightlife scene we expect in British culture. The other work really zones in on people we don't typically see on a night out. The lighting they use are very different as well, as I previously mentioned, from harsh to not harsh with Dukowski. Dukowski's photographs the British culture without publicly shaming people, whereas Wallace almost gives a harsh and otherworldly response to this by spotlighting certain people in a different and unusual light. Even within this photograph from 1933, entitled Repeal Prohibition, we can see how photographing people at their lowest and most vulnerable seems to be a recurring style when photographing alcoholic culture within society. Photography of the working class being seen in a distraught manner is also a recurring factor. It is important to mention that the upper class rarely get photographed in the same position within the media, which could be due to the fact that they are seen in a more godlike status compared to the working class. The working class received heavy publicity surrounding this matter due to the given status that they held. But has this been seen before? Does class really stay with you no matter what your state you're in? All of these photographers have one thing in common. They are all based in Britain and are all working class areas within the UK. As a country, we are known for our drinking culture and a lot of photography commercials for our nights out. Advertisement on social media and leaflets are the main source of attraction for people who want to go to nightclubs and locations like that. Although without this, the nightclub industry would suffer financially because these images and leaflets are the main source of advertisement for their business. We enjoy drinking because it forms a major part of our social life in England, and it's a way for us to hang out with friends we might not have seen in a while or see a lot of. As of 2020, there were 47,200 pubs in the UK. There's also 30 different nightclubs in the London area alone. These two locations provide Brits with plenty of places to drink and socialise, but it also offers photographers with some ideal locations to capture our industry. Peter Dench is a photographer who has won many awards in the past, such as the World Press Awards. Dench explores how it's always happy hour when drinking in the UK from his project Alcohol and England. From his upbringing as living with a family-run distillery, Dench has always had a relationship with alcohol. Dench wants to explore how the English have created an art from drinking alcohol by creating scenes that explore scenes created from the pastime of events. Using interesting oblique composition, Dench captures the surreal and madness that us Brits are known for when consuming alcohol. The bold and striking colour choices also help connote a playful atmosphere within this scene. Dench says that he found out from his project that drinking is ultimately classless and that alcohol can be found in most British scenes, which makes sense for why we use it so recreationally. Dench chooses to be an outsider looking in but not fully getting involved with the scene and simply documenting it from a sober person's perspective, which contrasts from someone like Dougie Wallace who gets really into the scene and up close and personal. From this, the ethics are not challenged far too much. However, Dench does make these photographs look almost out of this world from that angle. Legally, you can photograph drunk people. However, there is a moral dispute as if the subjects know what's going to happen to these photographs and if Dench is a celebrity or not, and therefore could have negative backlash on them within the future, which we have previously talked about. To summarise this section, British people are normally photographed at their most vulnerable and let loose. This creates lots of ethical problems surrounding what we can and can't photograph based upon the characters within the scene. I think that is also very interesting how we photograph people at their worst state within Nights Out and never at their happiest, maybe because us Brits we find it more interesting to show people at their most let loose and darker within a night out. Some photographers capture the whole scene, whereas others exploit certain characters within these scenes which may affect them more in later lives. Knowing that friends, family and co-workers will potentially see the images makes you feel embarrassed. As documentary photographers, their work captures our lives to document them for who we are and the events we do. As a generation who enjoys a night out, we wouldn't photograph our friends at their most and embarrassing because we know it's the right thing to do. But do these photographers? To answer the question, how is ethics considered when photographing alcohol culture, we have to point out that everyone views things differently and there is no right or wrong answer. It boils down to how you, the audience, see it acceptable and how the photographer has crafted a scene to look depending on the subject matter. Thank you for listening.